I am Rebecca Nolan, 42 years old, and I have worked as a school counselor in Denver for 16 years. At 10:06 on Monday morning, a woman I had never met called to ask whether I wanted to wire the money or use a card to pay the remaining $28,000 for my sister-in-law's wedding. I had never signed a contract with her, but before the call ended, she said my name was listed as the financial guarantor, next to an electronic signature and a copy of my driver's license. 3 minutes earlier, I had still been explaining to a student that he did not have to pay to submit the FAFSA. He sat in the plastic chair across from my desk, both hands gripping the straps of his backpack. A website had asked his family to pay a fee to expedite the processing of the financial aid application. I turned the screen toward him, opened the correct official site, and pointed to the word Times, free times in the acronym. FAFSA is free to submit, I said. You do not have to pay that fee. 16 years of doing this work had taught me that what was a small amount to one person could determine another person's entire future. My phone vibrated on the desk. An unfamiliar number appeared. Madison, Jason's younger sister, was getting married in 12 days, so I assumed the call might be related to the event. I answered. Rebecca Nolan. Hello, Miss Nolan. This is Vanessa Cole, the event director at Silver Peak Lodge. I could hear a keyboard in the background. I'm calling to confirm the payment method for the remaining balance. Would you like to send a wire transfer or use a card? What remaining balance? $28,000 for the wedding of Madison Nolan and Luke Parker. I heard every word clearly. They simply did not match anything I had ever agreed to. Vanessa, I think you have the wrong person. I did not sign any contract with Silver Peak Lodge. The typing stopped. Let me check. There was a brief silence. The total contract value is $46,000. $18,000 has been paid. The remaining $28,000 is due by Friday. You are listed as the financial guarantor. I put one hand on the edge of my desk. Based on what document? We have your electronic signature and a copy of your driver's license in the file. The student looked up. I realized I had stood without remembering when I had pushed my chair back. Could you wait for me in the hallway for a few minutes? He picked up his backpack and stepped outside. I closed the door before continuing. Vanessa, that is not my signature. I understand. I can send you the PDF to review. I gave her my work email address, one character at a time. One more thing, I said. Do not contact Jason. Not yet. Vanessa paused. Jason Nolan is listed as the financial contact in the file. I looked through the window in the door. The student stood in the hallway, looking down at the notes he had just taken. He had no idea that in less than 3 minutes I had discovered my name on a contract I had never signed. I need to read the document before anyone knows I am disputing the signature. I'll note your request, Vanessa said. The email is being sent now. The file arrived almost immediately. I sat down and opened it. The first page listed Madison Nolan and Luke Parker. Total value, $46,000. Jason was listed as the financial contact. My name appeared below his. Rebecca Nolan payment guarantor. I scrolled to the last page. The signature slanted to the right. The R had a large loop at the top. The tail of the N stretched out and dipped downward. It looked like my signature. I took a piece of scratch paper, signed my name in the lower corner, and held it beside the screen. The two signatures were almost identical, but my hand had never made the signature on that contract. Beside it was a copy of my driver's license. My first instinct was to call Jason immediately. I did not. I did not yet know what Jason had done. I only knew my identity had been used on a contract I had never signed. Vanessa, I said, where did the $18,000 payment come from? All I can see is that it was a direct transfer. The system does not display the full bank name. Can you see the last 4 digits? Yes. Read them to me. Vanessa read 4 numbers. The bell rang in the hallway to signal the change of periods. The sound seemed to come from very far away. Those 4 digits did not belong to the joint account Jason and I shared. They were the last 4 digits of the college account I had opened when Sophie was 3 years old, with the promise that she would never have to choose a school based only on money we did not have. An hour earlier, I had been standing in our bedroom, holding two dresses on hangers, and trying to decide which one looked less like something I would wear to a funeral. I had worn the navy one a few times. The gray one still had the tags on it. Jason stood in the doorway, tying his tie and watching me in the mirror. "The gray one," he said. "The blue one makes you look like you're headed to a parent conference." "I go to parent conferences all the time." "Exactly. And this is not a parent conference." He pulled the knot snug against his collar. "Can you decide today? Madison needs to know the color palette." "The color palette." "Yes, so the colors coordinate in the pictures." He said it as though it were obvious, and I was deliberately refusing to understand. "It's only 12 days away, Rebecca. This is the most important day of her life." I hung the gray dress on the closet doorknob. In the weeks of preparation, I had heard the phrase "the most important day of her life" so many times that it had become background noise. Downstairs, Sophie was already sitting at the table with a blue plastic binder open in front of her. She had labeled the front times college plan times in block letters on a strip of masking tape. Inside were school lists, program information, scholarship deadlines, and a spreadsheet she had built herself that I was not allowed to edit. Sophie was 16, but she took planning for college very seriously. "Mom," Sophie said without looking up, "I'm comparing two environmental engineering programs. One of them has more field hours." She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a picture of a group of students standing in a creek, wearing chest waders and holding test tubes. "They have a virtual information session next weekend," Sophie said. "Can we watch it together?" "Yes." I poured coffee. "I'll put it on my calendar." "You'll forget." "I'll set an alarm." Sophie typed into her spreadsheet and added another row. "I already put you on the attendee list." Jason came down the stairs, picked up his car keys from the counter, and checked his phone, in the same order he did every morning. "Dad," Sophie said, "do you think going out of state is worth it?" He did not look up from the screen. "Worth what?" "The higher tuition, but if the 529 keeps growing the way it has the last few years, and I add scholarships, then I'd have to borrow less than I thought." Sophie spoke calmly, as though solving a math problem. "I wanted to ask Mom what the latest balance is so I can update the spreadsheet." I lifted my coffee and took a sip. "I'll pull it up at the end of the month and tell you." I remember those exact words because later I would need to remember precisely what I had said to my daughter that morning. Jason put his phone face down on the counter. "Sophie," he said, "don't get hung up on one number. You should focus on applying for scholarships." "I am applying." "Then apply for more." He shrugged. "One school is as good as another if you work hard enough. You can also go to community college and transfer. Nobody cares where you spend your freshman year." I didn't say I wasn't willing to work hard. Sophie's voice rose slightly. "I just want to know how much I have so I can plan accurately." "You're 16. You do not have to calculate everything right now." I set down my cup. Sophie looked at the blue binder and closed it. I knew that was how she withdrew from a conversation without slamming a door. "Jason," I said, "why are you so tense?" "I'm not tense. She only asked about the balance in an account meant for her." He turned to look at me. For a few seconds, I thought I was going to get an honest answer. "You're the problem," he said. "You turn everything into a spreadsheet. Madison is about to have the biggest day of her life, and we're sitting here talking about out-of-state tuition. I never mentioned the wedding." "You didn't have to. It's in your tone." He picked up his keys. "You spend all day listening to students worry about money, then you bring that anxiety home and look at everything through it." Sophie stood, tucked the binder under one arm, and went upstairs. She did not say goodbye to either of us. Jason watched her go and exhaled. "I'll talk to her later." I wanted to ask what he planned to say. I wanted to ask why one question about tuition made him lose his composure when he could talk about Madison's flowers and band for weeks without getting tired. But 16 years as a counselor had taught me not to push a conversation farther than it could bear. At the time, I truly believed my husband was simply exhausted from carrying the burden of his sister's wedding. He stopped at the door with one hand on the knob. "Rebecca, I need one thing from you." "What?" "On the day, will you smile?" His voice softened. No matter what you think about the cost or about Madison, just for one day, let her have a perfect day. Have I ever ruined anyone's wedding? He did not laugh. He only nodded as if he had gotten what he needed and walked out. I washed my cup, turned off the kitchen light, went upstairs, and knocked on Sophie's door to tell her I had set an alarm for the virtual information session. She said thank you through the closed door. Then I drove to school, opened my office, and called in my first student. Exactly 1 hour later, the phone on my desk began to vibrate. I canceled 2 lunchtime appointments and wrote on the note I taped to my door, "In a meeting back at 1. Then I sat down and read the contract from the first page. The first page contained the event information. Madison Nolan and Luke Parker, 145 guests, total value $46,000. Jason was listed as the financial contact. The last page was the part I needed. Financial guarantor, 3 fields. The first held my name. The second held my home address, including the zip code. The third held an email address. I read that address 4 times before I saw what was wrong. My real email had 2 consecutive C's in the middle. The email in the contract had only 1. I opened a blank document, typed the 2 addresses side by side, and enlarged them. Placed next to each other, the difference was obvious, but on a form packed with text, they looked similar enough that no one would stop to check. I searched my inbox for Silver Peak Lodge, Madison's name, and the outstanding amount. There was no confirmation email, no contract, no payment reminder. That other address had not been created for me to see. It had been created so every email sent in my name would go to a different inbox. I called Vanessa back. "I need you to confirm a few details in the file." "I'll answer whatever the system allows me to disclose," she said. "What address were the confirmation emails sent to?" Vanessa read back the address with 1 C missing. "When was the electronic signature recorded?" I heard typing. 6 weeks ago. I wrote the date on the scratch paper beside the signature I had just made. 6 weeks earlier, Jason had stood in the bathroom doorway holding my wallet. He said our auto insurer needed a new photo of my driver's license because the old one on file had expired. I had said, "Go ahead and take it." I remembered the sound of his office door closing. I also remembered that I had not thought about it again because, at the time, I had no reason to be suspicious. "What about the copy of the driver's license?" "It was uploaded the same day," Vanessa said, 4 minutes before the signature was recorded. I looked at the 2 timestamps on the paper. The image of my driver's license had been uploaded first. The signature in my name appeared 4 minutes later. I sat very still, both feet flat on the floor. Not because I was dizzy. The opposite. Every detail had suddenly become clear. The email address off by 1 character, the driver's license image, the signature, and Jason's name in the financial contact section. My first instinct was to call Jason, tell him to explain, and wait for an answer reasonable enough to turn all of this into a mistake. I looked again at the words Times Payment Guarantor. If I called now, the person who knew this file best would know I had found it. I created a new folder and named it Times Silver Peak Lodge. "Vanessa, I need you to send me 4 more things." I'm taking notes. The signed contract. A record of the system emails sent to the guarantor, with dates and times. The file upload log. And the list of contacts registered for the event, including their roles. I'll need to verify whether I am authorized to provide the contact list. I understand. Vanessa was silent for a few seconds. "Miss Nolan, I need to make one thing clear. The event contract is still active, and the remaining balance is still due. If you deny the signature, I can record the dispute and send the file to management for review. I cannot decide who is right." "I'm not asking you to decide." I pulled the scratch paper closer. "I'm asking you to record that the person named as guarantor denies signing." "I can do that. Does that cancel the event?" "No. The event remains on the books. The $18,000 already paid is non-refundable, and the due date for the remaining balance does not change. While we verify the signature, we will pause any effort to collect the $28,000 from you and redirect the payment request to the renter." "Madison." "The renter," Vanessa said. I sat up straighter. I did not need to cancel the contract. I did not need to call vendors or threaten anyone. I only needed to make clear that my name had been placed in the guarantee section without my consent. One more thing, I said. My request from this morning still stands. Do not proactively call Jason or tell him that I contacted you. I am not obligated to proactively notify him, Vanessa said. But if the renter or the financial contact asks directly about the file status, I have to answer accurately based on the information we have. That is enough. The first files arrived in my inbox within 10 minutes. I downloaded the contract, the email information, and the upload log into the new folder, then saved a second copy. In the log, the image of my driver's license appeared on the same day as the signature. The contact list had 3 lines. Madison Nolan Renter. Luke Parker Co-Singer. Jason Nolan times primary financial contact. Jason's name appeared in the financial contact section. My name appeared in the section assigning responsibility for payment. I stared at those 2 lines until the end of period bell rang in the hallway. Locker doors slammed one after another. A group of students laughed loudly, then quickly fell quiet. I peeled the note off my door, crumpled it, and threw it into the trash. Then I opened a browser, entered the address for the 529 plan management site, and typed the username I had used since Sophie was 3. I entered my password. Incorrect login information. I typed it again more slowly and checked the caps lock key. Incorrect login information. I had to wait on the identity verification line. While I waited, I looked through my office window at the faculty parking lot. A school bus was backing into a space, making a steady beeping sound. I counted each beep because if I did not keep my mind on something specific, I would call Jason. Thank you for holding. I need to verify a few details. I gave the last 4 digits of my social security number, my date of birth, and the name of the beneficiary on the account. Sophie Nolan, I said. Thank you, Miss Nolan. The system shows that the password was changed. I'll send you a verification code so you can reset it. A few minutes later, I was able to log in. The dashboard appeared. I had opened that page many times over the years, usually at the end of the year, when the house was quiet and I wanted to see how much Sophie's fund had grown. The balance box sat in the upper left corner. 0美元. I did not stand up. I did not make a sound. The heater in my office switched on. I realized I had been holding my breath and forced myself to inhale. Then I did what my work had taught me to do whenever a number was wrong. I did not stare at the result. I looked for what had created it. I opened the account settings. The alert email had been changed to an address I did not recognize. Paper statements had been turned off. The backup phone number was not mine. Its last 4 digits matched the number Jason still used. I stared at those 3 lines for a long time. I did not yet know who had made the changes, but that person had not merely accessed the account. They had changed the way the system communicated with me. I opened the transaction history. There were only 2 large withdrawals. Withdrawal $35,000. Withdrawal $26,000. Both had been transferred to the same bank account ending in 4 familiar digits. The joint account Jason and I shared. $61,000 had left Sophie's college fund. I switched to our bank portal. The 2 deposits into the joint account matched the 2 withdrawals exactly. After each deposit, multiple outgoing transfers had been made over the following days. By the end of each round, almost none of that money remained. I still checked the joint account to pay bills, but the large amounts had moved through between my logins. The money had not been held there as savings. It had only passed through. I pulled my chair closer to the desk and opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, Sophies 529 Pfund. Below it, I wrote, current balance, $0. First withdrawal, $35,000. Second withdrawal, $26,000. Receiving account, joint account. Alert email changed. Paper statements turned off. Backup phone number is not mine. I read the list again. My first instinct was still to call Jason, but if he knew I had regained access to the account, he would also know exactly what I was looking at. I called the plan administrator again. This time, after verifying my identity, I was transferred to the account services department. I need to confirm 2 withdrawal transactions, I said. The representative read the amounts back to me. Both requests were submitted online through the account in your name. I did not make them. There was a pause on the other end. Are you saying you did not initiate or authorize either transaction? Correct. I am the account owner. I did not request the $35,000 withdrawal. I did not request the $26,000 withdrawal either. I discovered them today. Do you know who might have had access to the login information? I looked at the backup phone number on the screen. My husband could access devices and records in our home, I said. But I did not give him authority over this account. He is not the account owner, an authorized user, or the beneficiary. I did not say Jason had made the 2 transactions. I did not yet have evidence that allowed me to say that. The representative typed for several seconds. I will flag the account as disputed and freeze new transactions during the review. This will not automatically return the money already withdrawn, but it will open a case for investigation. What should I preserve? Download the statements, activity history, contact information changes, and the reference numbers for both transactions. We will also send confirmation that the account has been flagged. I understand. Miss Nolan, you should also preserve any related emails and speak with an attorney. I will. I ended the call and began downloading documents. The activity history showed that the alert email, statement preference, and backup phone number had all been changed before the 2 withdrawal requests appeared. I saved account statements, transaction history, contact information change history. The login log the system allowed me to download, reference numbers for both withdrawals, confirmation that the account was disputed. I placed everything in a new folder, named 529 Sophie, then saved a second copy somewhere, separate from the shared computer at home. I completed every step in order. I did not call Jason. I did not call Madison. I did not text Carol. I saved only what I could prove. A little before 1 in the afternoon, I reopened the joint account statement for one final review. The sunlight had shifted to the edge of my desk. In the hallway, student voices and slamming lockers echoed one after another. I found the first $35,000 deposit and reviewed the transactions immediately after it. The first line was an $18,000 transfer. The description was cut off on the screen. I widened the memo column. Silver Peak Lodge deposit Madison Nolan wedding. Early that afternoon, I sat in my office with the joint account statement open on my screen. 7 lines. That was all it had taken to spend $61,000. I opened a blank spreadsheet and started typing, not because I needed a computer to add 7 numbers. 16 years as a school counselor had taught me that money only became real when each amount was placed on its own clear line. 18,000 Silver Peak Lodge, deposit, 11 nulla bridal shop, 9,000. 500 band, sound and lighting, 7,000. 500 flowers and decor, 6,000 photography and video, 5,000. 500 honeymoon deposit, 3,500 welcome party and guest gifts. I entered the formula in the final cell and pressed enter. 6,100,000, not $1 over, not $1 short. I stared at that number longer than any other line on the screen. I did not yet know whether the expenses had been planned around the fund's balance or whether the fund had been drained in stages to pay for things Madison had already chosen, but the result was the same. Every dollar meant for Sophie had been used. I clicked the line for flowers and decor. $7,500. I remembered an evening at Carol's house. She had flipped through a wedding magazine at the kitchen table and said silk flowers would show in the pictures, while pictures lasted forever. She said it a second time while looking at me, as though waiting for me to object. I had not objected. At the time, I was thinking about Sophie's laptop. It was old, and I had offered to buy her a new one so she could prepare her college applications. Sophie had shaken her head. "It's okay, Mom. I can use the computers in the school library. Save the money." I had been proud of her for being thoughtful. Now I looked at the $7,500 spent on flowers and understood that Sophie had saved money for people who had not saved anything for her. I moved to the photography and video line. $6,000. Earlier, I had suggested that Jason set aside money for a college visit trip with Sophie. He had looked at the cost sheet I prepared and said money was tight that year and we should wait. I had believed him. I had treated it as a joint decision by two people trying to balance every need in the family. I did not put those memories into the spreadsheet. They did not prove who accessed the account. They also did not prove who knew where the money came from. They only showed me how many explanations I had accepted without asking another question. I moved the cursor back to the second line. Jedenast nulla bridal shop. I knew that dress. Madison had once shown Carol a picture during a family dinner. It had long lace sleeves and a row of tiny buttons down the back. Carol had covered her mouth with one hand, as though she were looking at something too beautiful to describe. Madison laughed and said she had thought she could never afford it. Then she said everything had been taken care of. I remembered looking at Jason. He offered no explanation, and Madison only said, "Jason handled it." I had assumed my husband had once again promised more than he could afford. I had even blamed myself for feeling irritated. Madison only got married once. The family had repeated that sentence often enough to make every question about money sound selfish. At the time, I had taken Jason's silence as proof that he had the expenses under control. I did not know he was using money that had never been meant for a wedding. I opened the transaction details. The store's name appeared at the top. Below it were the payment code, processing date, and amount, $11,000. The statement did not include an invoice. It only told me where the money had gone. I copied the store's name and opened the family's shared email account. Jason often forwarded emails with invoices or attachments there so he could open them on the computer at home. I searched for the store's name. A purchase confirmation email appeared. Madison had sent the invoice to Jason, and Jason had then forwarded it to the shared inbox. The customer's name was Rebecca Nolan. The description listed a wedding gown and alterations. Directly above the attachment was a line Madison had written to Jason. "I'll pay Sophie back later." Maybe. I read it once. Then I read it again. All morning, I had tried to hold on to one possibility. Jason might have told Madison he was using a bonus or savings. Madison might have accepted the dress without knowing it was being paid for with Sophie's college fund. The line she wrote in that email eliminated that possibility. She knew whose money it was. She knew she was benefiting from money intended for Sophie. And the final word told me repayment had never been a commitment. Maybe. My first instinct was to take a screenshot and send it directly to Madison. No question, no accusation, just let her look at the sentence she had written. I opened the messaging app and found her name. My finger stopped over the screen. If I sent it, Madison would call Jason. Jason would know I had accessed the shared inbox. Both of them would know exactly how much I had found. I closed the app. Instead, I downloaded the email and attached invoice, saved them in the 529 Sophie folder, and created a second copy. Then I captured the full screen, including the sender, recipient, amount, Madison's name, and the note. I did not message Madison. I did not question Jason. I kept doing the only thing that could protect me at that moment, preserving what they did not know I had seen. I returned to the 7-line spreadsheet. Venue deposit, wedding gown, band, flowers, photography, honeymoon, guest gifts. $61,000 had not vanished in one confusing transaction. It had been divided into specific items, specific services, and one perfect day for Madison. That morning, my question had been, who took the money? By early afternoon, I had another question. Did Madison know where it came from? I had hoped the answer was no. I no longer needed to ask her. The answer was in the email Madison sent with the invoice for the $11,000 dress. "I'll pay Sophie back later." Maybe. I arrived home late that afternoon. Jason's car was not in the garage. Sophie had texted that she would be home late after school. That gave me almost 2 hours alone in an empty house, and I knew exactly how I was going to use them. A few years earlier, Jason and I had created a shared inbox for bills, insurance documents, and Sophie's school paperwork. We both had access. I only opened it when I needed to download a document or check an invoice. I opened the laptop at the kitchen table and signed in. The inbox held hundreds of unread messages, most of them advertisements. I typed Madison's name into the search bar. Many results appeared. Most were harmless. Reservation confirmations, links to the wedding registry, sample invitation pictures Carol had sent to the family. Then I saw a thread titled Times Payment Plan, forwarded from Jason's private inbox to the shared account. I opened it and scrolled to the first message. Madison, are you sure? I don't want to sign the venue contract and then have to cancel. Does Rebecca check that account? Jason, she only looks at it at the end of the year. I already handled the alerts. Go ahead and sign. I read the sentence times I already handled the alerts times 3 times. Not that he would tell me later. Not that he would replace the money before I found out. He wrote it as something already completed. Madison, what about paying it back? How much was your bonus last year? Jason, enough to start. I'll figure out the rest later. Sophie has at least 18 months before college. Madison, what does enough to start mean? 61,000 isn't something you can put back with one bonus, Jason. I need to know where I stand. I stopped. The line Madison had written when she sent the dress, invoice told me she knew the money belonged to Sophie. This thread showed that she also knew Jason's promise to repay it had no real amount or plan behind it. She had realized the bonus was not enough before the wedding was paid for. Jason, I'll handle it. Your job is not to bring this up around Rebecca. Don't talk about the flowers. Don't talk about the venue. Don't say who paid for what. We'll deal with it after the wedding. Madison, okay. One word. No objection. No request that Jason stop. No question about whether Sophie agreed. At that point, the last possibility I had been preserving for Madison disappeared. She had not been surprised after the money was spent. She knew in advance that Jason could not replace the full amount with the bonus he kept mentioning, and she still agreed to remain silent until after the wedding. I kept scrolling. After the deposit was transferred, Jason forwarded the thread to Carol and Frank with one short line. The deposit is done. Nobody mentioned money at Sunday dinner. Carol replied, Carol, I know you're worried, but Madison only gets married once. Sophie has scholarships, community college, and student loans. She has many options. Madison only has her family. I put both hands flat on the table. For 16 years, I had sat across from families who had to calculate every dollar of tuition, rent, and books. I knew that she can borrow did not mean a child paid no price. It only meant that today's money would become that child's obligation for years afterward. Carol wrote it as if student debt were a ready-made source of money waiting for Sophie to surrender her fund to Madison. Frank's name appeared in the recipient field of the entire thread. I searched for each of his responses. There were none. I could not know when Frank had opened each email, but he had received the entire exchange and had never objected in the thread. I used to call his silence gentleness. Sitting in front of the screen that day, I was no longer sure those were the same thing. The final message sat at the bottom of the thread. Madison, what if Rebecca finds out before the wedding? Jason, don't let her find out before. Let everything happen. When it's time to tell Sophie, I'll say the market went down, the fund didn't grow as expected, and she has to adjust her school list. Sophie is only 16. She doesn't read investment reports. I read the final sentence and kept my hands on the table. Everything I had found before that point described what had already happened. Contact information changed, money withdrawn, invoices paid. This email described what Jason still intended to do. He had not only taken Sophie's money, he had prepared an explanation designed to make her believe no one had taken anything. He intended to turn a deliberate choice into a bad investment year, then ask Sophie to shrink her plans. In the entire thread, no one asked whether Sophie agreed. I downloaded the email thread, preserving the sender, recipient, and timestamps. I saved screenshots of every message in the 529 Sophie folder, then backed them up to an external drive and a private storage location Jason could not access. I did not reply to the thread. I did not forward it to anyone in the family. I signed out of the shared inbox and closed the laptop. The kitchen was quiet. Afternoon light stretched across the table and touched the chair where Sophie sat every morning with her college plan binder. I thought about Jason saying the market had fallen. I thought about the way he had chosen both the words and the timing of the lie he planned to tell our daughter. The garage door opened as the sky began to darken. Jason came in carrying a white pastry box tied with a ribbon. He set it on the island and lifted the lid. Inside were small pieces of cake, each marked with a paper label. The bakery sent samples, he said, taking off his coat. I have to choose soon. He turned to me and smiled, the smile he always used when he wanted to draw me back toward him. Will you help me choose? I can't tell one from another. I took 2 plates from the cabinet and set them on the kitchen island. It was the first choice I had been forced to make since the call at 10:06 that morning. If I refused, Jason would ask why, and I was not ready for him to know what I had found. Put them out, I said. Sophie came home not long afterward, dropped her backpack on a chair, and stopped when she saw the cake box. What is that? Wedding cake samples. Jason pushed the box toward her. Try one. I need another opinion. Sophie sat on a stool, picked up a small piece, and took a bite. It's good. She looked at the paper label in the cake. Is it expensive? Why do you ask? Sophie shrugged. I'm guessing one piece of this cake costs about the same as a college textbook. Jason laughed. He laughed louder than the joke required and kept going one beat after Sophie had fallen silent. I stood on the other side of the island with a piece of cake on my plate, watching him close the box too carefully. Sophie took another piece and stood. I still have chemistry homework. She carried the cake upstairs. I tasted the piece on my plate. It was so soft and sweet that there was almost no other flavor left. Is it good? Jason asked. It's fine. I set down my fork. Has the wedding been paid for in full? He was rearranging the labels in the box. His hands did not stop. Almost. Why are you asking? All through the planning, I haven't heard anyone say what the total cost is. Because you don't need to worry about it. He closed the lid. Mom and Dad helped with some. I used my bonus. Madison and Luke covered their share. The rest is just paperwork. Paperwork? Documents for the venue. Resorts like that make you sign a lot of things. I carried both plates to the sink. I turned on the faucet and let the water cover the silence between us. What about the $28,000? Behind me, the sound of Jason adjusting the cake box stopped. I shut off the water, dried my hands, and turned around. He was looking at me, not startled, not pale, just watching as though trying to determine how much I knew. Who told you that number? Does it matter? Yes. He leaned against the island. If Madison called you, I need to know. I told everyone that anything involving money had to go through me. He had told them. That sentence confirmed part of the email thread Jason did not know I had read. The venue is still owed $28,000, I said. How are you planning to pay it? I'm working on it. That is not an answer. Rebecca. He exhaled. Places like that always want a financial reference behind the contract. It's just paperwork. It does not mean that person will actually have to pay. It is only a name in the file. I stood still. I had asked how he planned to pay. He answered by talking about a name in a contract. Is my name in that file, Jason? He looked down at the cake box and adjusted the ribbon. Do you really want to have this conversation tonight? That is a yes or no question. I don't remember every line in a stack of papers I handled about 6 weeks ago. I let the answer sit between us. He had not said no. My instinct was to pull out my phone, open the page with my name, and place it in front of him. I thought about the final payment deadline. I thought about Jason calling Vanessa as soon as he knew I had the contract. I still had not spoken to an attorney. I left the phone in my pocket. All right, I said. Jason looked up. Relief crossed his face before he could hide it. Rebecca, listen. He came around the island and lowered his voice. There are 12 days left. 145 guests have made plans to come. If there is anything in the paperwork you don't like, a name, a signature, whatever, we can deal with it after the wedding. I looked at him. I had asked whether my name was in the file. I had never mentioned a signature. Jason continued. One signature should not be the reason my sister's wedding is ruined. I kept my eyes on his face. Okay, I said. He put a hand on my arm and gave it a small squeeze as though we had reached an agreement, then carried the cake box to the refrigerator. I stayed in the kitchen, wiping the island even though it was already clean. My hands were shaking, but I did not call him back. Jason believed I would stay silent, not because he believed he had done nothing wrong. He was betting that I would not want to ruin the wedding and would not want Sophie to know what her father had done. He had taken our daughter's money, then relied on her pain to keep me quiet. That night, after the house had gone silent, I sat alone in my car outside the garage and opened my phone. I found Maya Chen's number. I had never called her before, but I knew I could not take another step without understanding exactly what I needed to protect. I wrote, "Hello, Miss Chen. My name is Rebecca Nolan. I need to meet with you before 8 tomorrow morning. I have a contract, statements, and related emails. This is urgent." Maya Chen's office was on the 4th floor of an office building. At 7:45 Tuesday morning, she was the only person there. Maya opened the door with a cup of coffee in one hand and pointed to the long conference room table. "Lay everything out." I had printed every document the night before. I arranged them in separate stacks in the order I had found them. The Silver Peak Lodge contract. The guarantor section has my name, address, and electronic signature. The guarantor email is one character different from my real address. A copy of my driver's license was uploaded immediately before the signature appeared. Maya sat down and pulled the first stack toward her. "This is the 529 account history. The alert email was changed, paper statements were turned off, and the backup phone number was replaced with the number Jason still uses. There were 2 withdrawals, 35,000 and 26,000. Both went into the joint account and were transferred out over the following days." She kept turning pages. "These are the 7 expenditures, totaling exactly $61,000. The email Madison sent with the dress purchase confirmation includes a line about paying Sophie back. And this is the email thread between Jason, Madison, Carol, and Frank." Maya spent the most time on the email stack. She did not skim. When she reached the end, she went back to one passage and rested her hand on the pages. "Rebecca, I need to ask you one question. What have you done since yesterday afternoon?" I asked the venue to record that I deny signing the guarantee. I told the plan administrator I did not make the 2 withdrawals. The account has been marked as disputed, and new transactions have been frozen. "Did you call any vendors? The florist, the band, the bridal shop?" "No." "Did you empty or transfer money out of the joint account?" "No." "Did you threaten Jason or Madison?" "No." "Have you told Sophie?" "Not yet." Maya leaned back in her chair. "Then you did the most important things correctly and avoided the reactions that could have made this file more complicated." She set down her coffee. "Now I'm going to tell you what you must not do. First, do not call vendors and demand that they cancel services. You are not the person who hired the florist, band, or photographer. Interfering with their contracts could create unnecessary additional disputes. I understand. Second, do not empty the joint account, hide assets, or change ownership documents. I know you want to protect what is left, but you have to do it in a way you can clearly explain to a court. What if Jason empties it? I'll prepare a notice to preserve assets and tell you how to secure the accounts you are legally entitled to control." Maya raised another finger. "Third, do not threaten him. Do not text that you will cancel the wedding, call the police, or make him lose his job. From now on, treat every message as something that could be read to a judge." She looked directly at me. "Fourth, do not use Sophie as a messenger. She does not call Jason, Madison, or her grandparents to ask questions for you. When Sophie learns the truth, she has the right to react, but you do not place responsibility for solving this on her shoulders." I looked down at the stacks of paper. "Maya, should I make sure the wedding does not happen?" "No," she answered immediately. "Your goal is not to destroy a wedding. Your goal is to protect your name, your credit, your assets, and Sophie's education fund." She pushed the contract toward me. "You do not need to cancel anything. You only need to formally deny an obligation you never accepted. After that, the remaining 28,000 becomes the responsibility of the renter and the people who promised to pay it." I sat with that sentence. Since the day before, I had thought I had only 2 choices: remain silent so the wedding could continue, or actively destroy it. Maya had just shown me a third option. I could stop carrying responsibility for a decision I had never made. So what do we do? Maya pulled a blank sheet of paper toward her and began to write. 6 objectives, in this exact order. 1. Deny liability for the $28,000. I'll send a formal dispute letter to Silver Peak Lodge stating that you did not sign and did not authorize anyone to sign for you. 2. Preserve evidence. I will keep one complete set of the documents. You do not delete emails, messages, account histories, or any response from the family. 3. Shut down unauthorized financial access. Change passwords, separate devices, and remove Jason from accounts he has no legal right to use. 4. Determine what can still be recovered. Deposits, services not yet performed, merchandise that can be returned. We need to know what portion of the $61,000 can still come back. 5. Prevent any new debt from being created in your name. 6. Prepare the divorce filing. I'll draft it. You do not have to decide today when to file. I stopped at item 5. He already took the money. What new debt could there be? Maya tapped the tip of her pen against the paper. We do not yet know the full scope of the information he can access. But someone used your driver's license and signature in a contract. Until we know everything, we have to protect your credit. How? Place credit alerts, change security information, and require direct verification before any new loan or account can be opened. I'll give you a checklist after this meeting. She asked me to list every financial document Jason could access in the house. I named them one by one. Maya wrote each one down but did not conclude that he had used any of them. When the page was almost full, she set down her pen. One more thing. I looked at her. Maya rested her hand on Jason's email thread. How was he planning to explain a zero balance to Sophie? Maya's question followed me through Tuesday morning. I met with students, signed paperwork, and sat through a meeting. In every quiet moment, my mind returned to the same question. What was Jason going to say when Sophie asked where her college money had gone? Early that afternoon, I asked to leave school early. Our family had a shared cloud storage folder for tax documents, insurance, the mortgage, and home repair receipts. Jason and I both had access. I opened the folder and sorted the files by modification date. A new subfolder appeared at the top of the list. Sophie Plan. I had never seen it. Before opening it, I captured the folder name, file list, and modification dates. Then, I downloaded copies to my personal computer, so I would not alter any of the originals. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the first file. It was a spreadsheet showing the value of the 529 fund. The first rows showed the balance rising steadily from year to year. Then, near the bottom, the numbers dropped sharply. The notes column used 2 phrases: market adjustment, slow recovery. I opened the real statement in another window and placed the 2 tables side by side. None of the numbers in the final section of Jason's spreadsheet matched the account's actual history. The fund had not declined because of the market. The money had been withdrawn. This spreadsheet was not created to track the fund. It was created to explain a low balance without mentioning the $35,000 and $26,000 transactions. The next file was named Letter to Sophie Draft. I opened it. Jason wrote that the market had been unpredictable in recent years. He wrote that her parents had done everything they could, but the fund's value had not grown as expected. He told Sophie she should not see borrowing money as a failure because many American students did the same thing. Then he suggested that she adjust her school list. Community college for the first 2 years. Transfer afterward. Prioritize in-state tuition. Do not choose a school only because of a field program or a beautiful campus. I stopped reading there. It was the same argument Jason had used at the kitchen table. When Sophie asked about going out of state, he told her she could attend community college and transfer. He had presented it like a casual suggestion from a father rushing out the door. It was not casual. He had prepared the explanation in advance. The third file was a comparison chart for community college and a 4-year university. Next to tuition were columns for housing, books, and the amount that might have to be borrowed. The next file was a 10-year repayment schedule. The borrower's name was blank, but the monthly payments had already been calculated. I looked at those numbers and thought of Sophie sitting with her college plan binder, trying to calculate everything so her education would not become a burden to me. Jason had built a different spreadsheet, one that calculated how to turn the money he took into debt someone else would have to repay. The next file made my hand stop on the trackpad. Its name was Parents plus Rebecca. It was not yet an application that could be submitted. Sophie had not selected a school, the academic year had not been entered, and the final certification was blank. But Jason had prepared almost all of my information in a draft. Full name, home address, date of birth, social security number, contact information, Sophie's name and my relationship to her. Next to that was a link to the studentaid.gov portal and a list of steps to complete after Sophie selected a school. The final line said, Rebecca logs in and confirms. I scrolled down to the notes. A parent plus loan is not a loan in the student's name. The parent is the borrower and is responsible for repayment. The amount can be as high as the remaining cost of attendance after other aid. I knew that because I had explained it to many families. I also knew the application could not be validly submitted without the borrower's studentaid.gov account and electronic confirmation. Jason could not complete it for me yet. He needed me to log in myself. He needed me to confirm it myself. I sat staring at that line until the screen dimmed from inactivity. Then I touched the trackpad to wake it again. I understood the sequence he had prepared. First, the false spreadsheet showing the market reducing the fund. Then the letter saying her parents had done everything they could. Next, the school comparison chart and repayment plan. Finally, the parent plus draft in my name. He was not only planning to lie to Sophie, he was planning to put me inside the lie. He would force me to choose between telling our daughter that her father had taken her college fund or putting a loan in my own name to replace the missing money. I stood, poured a glass of water, and held it with both hands until they stopped tightening around it. When I returned to the table, I opened the next file. It was a bonus notice from Jason's employer. Estimated performance bonus. $18,000 before taxes. $18,000. Before taxes. In the email thread, Madison had asked whether the bonus would be enough to replace the $61,000. Jason answered that it was enough to start and that he would figure out the rest later. This bonus notice had been created before the email thread. He knew the real amount when he answered Madison. He knew $18,000 could not replace $61,000. I opened the file properties and captured the creation date. Then I saved a copy of the notice in the private evidence folder. I did not message Maya immediately. I wanted to read everything before describing any of it, so every sentence I said afterward would be based on documents rather than anger. The final file was a short document made up of bullet points. Begin with the market decline. Emphasize that her parents tried. Do not mention the amount withdrawn. Do not mention the wedding. Present community college as the reasonable option. Say borrowing is normal. I read each line. This was not a passing thought. Jason had arranged the order of the conversation he planned to have with our daughter. He had chosen what to say, what to hide, and how to make Sophie believe that changing her dreams was her own reasonable choice. There was a blank space at the bottom of the document. Below it was a single line, separate from the list. I enlarged the screen. Rebecca will agree. She will not let Sophie know her father did this. The restaurant had a rooftop terrace overlooking the mountains, and Madison had reserved the entire outdoor space for about 30 guests on Saturday afternoon. 8 days before the wedding, I arrived a few minutes late because I had sat in the car preparing myself to walk in. For the past 4 days, I had learned how to stand in front of Jason and act as though I knew nothing. I had not yet tried to do that among 30 people celebrating a wedding paid for with Sophie's money. The terrace had a wall of white flowers, a champagne cart, and wooden signs with cursive lettering set on the tables. I did not know which of those items belonged to the 7 expenses I had found. That was something I had not anticipated. Ever since I saw the statement, every beautiful thing connected to the wedding made me wonder how much Sophie had paid for it. Madison sat in the center of the terrace on a high-backed wicker chair, opening gifts one by one. Carol sat beside her, collecting wrapping paper and ribbons into a pile. I stood at the edge of the space with a glass of lemonade. A woman beside me turned. "You're Madison's sister-in-law, right?" "I'm Rebecca. Madison said you work at a school." "I'm a school counselor." "That must be a difficult job." She looked toward Madison. "Have you seen the wedding dress yet?" Carol heard and turned around. "No one has seen it yet," she said loudly enough for the people nearby to hear. "But I have." She waited until everyone was paying attention, then said, $11,000. Lace, long sleeves, so beautiful that I told Madison she only gets married once and should not choose a dress based on price. People murmured with admiration. A few clapped. I held my glass at waist level. It was the first time I had heard another person say the number $11,000 aloud. For days, it had only been a line in my spreadsheet. Now it was a reason for the whole terrace to applaud, while Carol described the dress in the same voice she had used to say Sophie could borrow money for college. Madison stood after opening the final gift. She held up a glass of champagne and waited for everyone to turn back toward her. "I just want to say one thing." She looked at Jason. "At first, Luke and I planned to have something small because that was what we could afford. Then Jason called me." Jason stood near the champagne cart with a glass in one hand. Madison continued. He said, "You only get married once. I'll handle it." She raised her glass toward him. "You saved my dream, Jason. I will never forget it." Everyone turned and applauded. Jason raised his glass and lowered his head as though the attention embarrassed him. I knew the dress, flowers, band, and venue had been paid for with Sophie's fund. But in front of 30 people, Jason stood there like a generous brother who had used his own money to save his sister's wedding. Luke stepped beside Madison and put one hand behind her back. "I want to add something," he said. "I'm not used to accepting large amounts of money from other people, so at first I was uncomfortable." He looked at Jason. "But after the wedding, I'm going to sit down with you and make a repayment plan. I do not want this to be a gift. I want to treat it as a loan." He said it clearly in front of every guest. I looked at Luke. He sounded embarrassed to be discussing money in public. He thanked Jason, as though Jason himself had given them the money, and as though it could be repaid directly to him. Luke had not appeared in the email thread about the 529 fund. What he said made me think he did not know the real source of the money. My first instinct was to walk over and ask what Madison had told him. But if I spoke then, Luke would question Madison. Madison would call Jason. Both would know I had read the records and emails. I set down my lemonade and walked inside the restaurant. Madison caught up with me in the hallway. "Rebecca." I turned. She stood in the middle of the corridor with her arms crossed. The smile she had worn on the terrace was gone. "I need to ask you something." "I'm listening." "Silver Peak says the guarantee has still not been confirmed." She tilted her head. "Have you taken care of it?" "I have not agreed to guarantee any amount, Madison." Her face changed for one brief beat, then immediately returned to normal. "Are you serious?" "Yes." Madison lowered her voice. 145 people have bought tickets and reserved rooms. Luke's family arranged their trip. You understand that if something happens at the last minute, everyone will want to know who caused it, don't you? It sounds like you have thought about that. Of course I have. She stepped closer. This is the final week before the wedding. You may not like the cost. You may not like me. But do not turn my wedding day into a place where you prove some point. I let her finish. Then I asked, Madison, you just told 30 people that Jason had taken care of everything. Luke also said he planned to repay Jason. So? If Jason has already paid, why does Silver Peak still need my guarantee signature? Madison opened her mouth. I waited. She had an answer for every expression of gratitude on the terrace. She had an answer for what 145 guests would think. She had an answer for why I had to remain silent. But she did not have an answer to that question. Outside on the terrace, someone lightly tapped a champagne glass. Laughter followed immediately. Madison adjusted the strap of her dress and looked directly at me. You would never dare do that in front of 145 people. On Monday of the wedding week, Maya called me at 9 in the morning. Take a half day today, she said. We need to finish protecting your name and your credit. We worked from 10 until early afternoon in the fourth-floor conference room, with a two-sided checklist and a stack of forms. The first item was the formal dispute letter to Silver Peak Lodge. Maya read the draft to me paragraph by paragraph. The letter stated that I, Rebecca Nolan, did not sign the Silver Peak Lodge contract, did not authorize anyone to sign on my behalf, and did not agree to become the financial guarantor. It also stated that the email address in the guarantor file was not my email address. Attached was a declaration I signed, a sample of my actual signature, and a copy of identification that I personally provided for verification purposes. Read it carefully before you sign, Maya said. This will be your official statement. Every later document will be compared against it. I read every line. Nothing in it said Jason had created the signature. Nothing in it said Madison had committed a crime. The document stated only what I could affirm. My name had been used. The signature had not been made by me. I had not agreed to guarantee the payment. I signed. The second task was securing the accounts held solely in my name. Maya had divided the list into two columns. The first column said, individual accounts, personal email, 529 plan, studentaid.gov account, online tax records, cell phone carrier account, credit cards held solely in my name, evidence storage. For each account, I created a new password that I did not use anywhere else. I moved two-factor authentication to my own phone number, checked the recovery email, and signed out devices I did not recognize. The 529 password had already been reset when I discovered the zero balance. That day, I reviewed every recovery setting and stored the backup codes somewhere Jason could not access. The second column said, joint accounts, joint bank account, family email account, shared cloud folder. You do not lock Jason out of these, Maya said. He has the same lawful access you do. You do not change the passwords, delete data, or make assets disappear. I understand. You preserve what is already there. I downloaded copies of emails, device lists, and the login histories the systems allowed me to export. I did not change Jason's access. The shared emails device list showed a laptop being used at times when I had not logged in. I saved that information. I did not click sign out. The third task was my credit. I placed a separate credit freeze with all three credit bureaus. Each one issued a different recovery code. I saved the codes in the private archive and printed another copy for Maya to keep with the file. A credit freeze did not erase my history. It simply prevented a new loan or line of credit from being opened in my name until I personally lifted the freeze. What about studentaid.gov? I asked. Check it now. I logged into the account in my name. I changed the password, recovery email, verification phone number, and reactivated two-factor authentication using my own device. Then I checked the financial aid application section. No Parent Plus application had been submitted. No loan was being processed. The draft Jason had prepared was still only a file in the cloud folder. It could not become a valid loan unless I logged in and certified it myself. I leaned back and exhaled. Done, I said. No one can use that account without going through me. Maya looked at the screen. That is what matters. Not because we know he will try, because from now on he no longer has the opportunity to do it without your knowledge. The fourth task took place at the bank branch. Maya came with me. We met with the manager and provided a copy of the dispute letter and my identity verification documents. The bank added an alert to my customer profile. Any change to an account held solely in my name at that bank had to be verified directly through my phone number or by my appearing at the branch. Any new credit request at that bank would also require additional review. The joint account remained accessible to both Jason and me. I did not transfer money. I did not empty the account. I did not change ownership. The fifth task was preserving potential recovery. Maya sent a request to the 529 administrator to maintain the disputed status, preserve the full system history, and remove recovery information I had not authorized. She also prepared record preservation notices for the vendors that had received money from the joint account. The notices required them to retain contracts, invoices, payment records, and information about any refunds. You cannot make them send the money directly to you, I said. Correct, Maya replied, but I can require them not to delete records and to disclose if a refund is issued. Then we can ask that the money be addressed in the property settlement, so it cannot disappear again. Exactly. Early that afternoon, I called Silver Peak Lodge. Vanessa Cole answered, Vanessa, my attorney sent a dispute letter this morning. I want to confirm Silver Peak received it. We received it and forwarded it to management and legal counsel, she said. The file has been updated. Can you tell me the current status? I'll tell you exactly what the system says. Vanessa paused as though reading. First, the guarantee in your name is disputed. While it is under review, Silver Peak has suspended all efforts to collect the $28,000 from you. All right. Second, the renter's contract remains active. If the renter pays the full $28,000 before the deadline, the event can proceed under the current terms. What is the deadline? 9 p.m. Friday, during the rehearsal dinner. So, my dispute letter did not change it? No. It also did not automatically cancel the event. It only means Silver Peak does not have an approved replacement guarantor and cannot rely on the disputed signature to collect from you. I understand, Vanessa continued. The renter still has the right to pay the remaining balance. If they do, we will host the event as scheduled. I am not asking Silver Peak to cancel or change any term, I said. I'll note that. I am also not asking you to keep this secret from the renter. If they ask about the file's status, answer truthfully. We will communicate with the parties to the contract through our ordinary process, Vanessa said. I will not make a separate call outside that process solely to describe the conversation between you and your attorney. That is enough. I thanked her and ended the call. Maya sat at the other end of the table. You did not ask the venue to cancel the event, she said. No. You also did not ask them to move the deadline earlier. I have no right to do that. Correct. I straightened the stack of papers. I do not want to interfere with their contract. If Madison, Luke, and Jason find $28,000, the wedding still happens. And if they do not, then Silver Peak follows the contract. Maya lightly tapped the end of her pen on the table. His family will not see it that way. I know. They will say you set a trap and waited until the last minute. I did not set a trap. I looked at the copy of the guarantee page in front of me. They spent $61,000 when none of them had $61,000. The only thing holding the rest of the wedding up is my name in the contract. I placed a finger on the line times payment guarantor. I am only removing my name from an obligation I never accepted. Maya watched me for a few seconds. They still think you will sign at the last minute, she said. That is why none of them is truly panicking. They believe that once the guests have arrived and the clock is almost out, you will not be able to withstand the pressure. I know. When they put the pen in front of you, remember what you did today. You did not cancel the wedding. You did not move money. You did not call vendors. You protected your identity. I nodded. On the way home, I stopped at the grocery store to buy dinner. I stood in front of the produce section for a long time without putting anything in my cart. I thought about Sophie. She would come home, open the refrigerator, and ask what we were having for dinner. She still believed the 529 fund was intact. She still believed her question at the kitchen table had only irritated her father because he was tired. Over the past few days, I had protected the things that could be locked with passwords, authentication codes, and an attorney's letter. One person in the house was still unprotected from the lie. I could not protect Sophie with a password. I took out my phone and texted Maya. I am telling Sophie tonight. Maya replied, Tell her only the facts you can prove. Do not give her the worst emails. Sophie is your daughter, not a jury. A second message appeared immediately afterward. They still think your signature is the final door. Let them walk up to it and knock. On Monday night, Jason went out with his sales team. I waited until Sophie finished dinner and started loading dishes into the dishwasher. Can you sit down for a minute? I need to talk to you. She turned around with a bowl still in her hands. I watched her read my face for a second. Did someone die? No one died. Is something wrong with you and Dad? Yes. But I need you to sit down so I can explain it correctly. I pulled out a chair for her. I had practiced my opening sentence many times in the car. None of them worked when she was actually sitting in front of me. "I'm going to tell you what I know for certain," I said. "Only what I have evidence for. If there is something I am not sure about, I will tell you I am not sure, okay?" "Okay." She put both hands on the table. "Your 529 fund, the account I opened when you were 3. I opened the laptop and turned the screen toward her. Before 2 withdrawals, it had $61,000 in it." Sophie looked at the number. Her eyes brightened for half a second before she understood that I had used the past tense. "Before 2 withdrawals? There was one withdrawal for $35,000, then another for $26,000. I scrolled down so she could see both transactions. "The current balance is 0. She said nothing. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. Her right hand gripped the edge of the table. "I did not make or authorize those 2 withdrawals," I said. "I found them last week. I disputed them with the plan administrator, and I am working with an attorney to recover as much as possible." "Who took it?" I knew that question would come, but I still had to pause before answering. "The account changes, and the emails I found show that your father was involved. The alert email was changed, paper statements were turned off, and the backup phone number was replaced with the number he still uses." "What did he take it for?" "Aunt Madison's wedding." Sophie sat very still. Then she gave a short laugh, with no humor in it. "I asked him right at this table," she said. "I asked what the latest balance was. I remember. He told me not to get hung up on one number. I remember." She released the edge of the table and put her hands in her lap. "Did Aunt Madison know?" "I have evidence that she knew the money came from your college fund. There is a note she wrote on the dress paperwork, and an email where she asked your father whether I checked the account." "What about Grandma and Grandpa?" "Your grandmother replied in the email thread and said you could rely on scholarships, community college, or student loans. Your grandfather received the entire thread. I did not see him object or ask them to stop." Sophie looked toward the kitchen window. It was dark outside, and the glass reflected only the kitchen and the 2 of us. "Can you show me?" I turned the laptop closer to her. "I'll show you the balance and the 2 withdrawals. This affects you directly, so I am not hiding it from you." "What about the emails?" "Not tonight." "Why?" "Because they contain things people wrote about you." I kept my voice even. "I will not lie about what they say. But I do not want you to read every word while you are just finding out. Later, after you have had time, if you still want to see them, we can talk about it again." Sophie did not argue. I had prepared for her to argue. "There is one more thing I have to tell you," I said. "Your father had already prepared an explanation for you." "What explanation?" "There is a draft letter saying the market went down. The fund did not grow as expected, and you should narrow your school list. There is also a spreadsheet designed to make the balance look as though it declined because of the market. The numbers do not match the real statements." Sophie looked up. "Dad was going to lie to me. That is what the documents show. Not that he took it and planned to pay it back, then tell me." She spoke slowly, checking each step. "He wrote the lie before I knew." "Yes." I took a breath. "He also prepared a Parent Plus draft in my name, that is a loan in the parent's name, not the student's. It could not be submitted without me logging in and certifying it myself." Sophie looked at me. "He was going to make you borrow back the money he took?" I cannot know exactly what he planned to say to me when the time came, but the documents show that he prepared for me to take out a loan after telling you the fund had lost money in the market." She stood up. For a few seconds, I thought she was going upstairs. Instead, she went to her backpack, took out the blue binder, and brought it back to the table. She did not open it. She put both hands on the cover. "My spreadsheet is all wrong," she said. "Yes. I calculated out-of-state tuition, housing, scholarships, and the fund." Her voice stayed steady, but it began to thin. "I even made a worst-case scenario. Sophie, in my worst-case scenario, there was still money in the fund." She looked at me. "I never considered 0. I reached across the table. Sophie did not take my hand, but she did not pull hers away. We sat quietly for a while. "I want to ask you something," she said. "Okay. Are you going to cancel the wedding?" It was the question I had prepared for most carefully. but I still paused so she would hear exactly what I meant. No, I am not canceling the wedding. I am only refusing to pay more. I do not understand. Silver Peak Lodge is still owed $28,000. The contract lists me as guarantor with a signature I did not make. I have formally denied that signature. Now, the people who signed the contract and spent the money have to handle the rest themselves. I held her gaze. I did not call any vendors and cancel services. The wedding can still happen if they pay. I only removed my name from an obligation I never agreed to. What if they cannot pay? Then the consequences belong to the people who made those decisions, not you and not me. Sophie nodded once. I have one more question. She looked down at the binder. Do you want me to hate Dad? The question hit a place I had not prepared for. No, I said. I want you to know the truth. You have the right to be angry, sad, still love him, not want to speak to him, or not know what you feel yet. I will not ask you to take sides, even if Dad asks. Even then, you are not responsible for refereeing adults. Sophie picked up the binder, stood, and tucked it under one arm. At the foot of the stairs, she stopped. Friday is the rehearsal dinner. Yes? Am I still on the guest list? I turned fully toward her. Sophie, you do not have to go. I can say you are not attending and offer no further explanation. No one has the right to force you to answer questions. I know. She stood at the bottom of the stairs with one hand on the railing. Her voice was very calm. I am going. I want to hear them thank Dad while I am sitting there. Carol called me Tuesday night. Rebecca, can you come to my house for dinner at 7? I'm making chicken. She did not ask whether Sophie was coming. That alone told me it was not a dinner invitation. When I arrived, Jason's and Madison's cars were already outside. There was no chicken. The dining table had been cleared. A stack of papers sat in the center. Jason sat on the left. Madison sat on the right. Frank sat at the head of the table with a cup of coffee. Carol pointed to the chair across from her. Sit down, Rebecca. I sat, placed my bag beneath the chair, and kept my coat on. Carol folded her hands on the table. I'll be direct. The family has discussed this, and we think the situation is being misunderstood. No one stole from anyone. Jason only borrowed money from Sophie's fund. She paused. It was a family loan. She said it as though resolving a minor misunderstanding about a schedule. All right, I said. Then I have a few questions about this loan. Go ahead. What is the interest rate? No one answered. What is the repayment date? Carol looked at Jason. I am the account owner, I said. I did not sign a loan agreement, so who borrowed from whom? Rebecca, Jason began. This is not… Madison, I turned to her. How much will you repay each month? Madison crossed her arms. I am not the borrower. Jason borrowed it. You received the benefit of the money. That is between Jason and me. $61,000 was in my daughter's education fund. I kept my voice normal. How much of it did you receive? Madison did not answer. I turned back to Jason. If this was a family loan and everyone at this table knew, why was the alert email changed to an address I did not know? Why were paper statements turned off? Why was the verification phone number replaced with yours? No one spoke. Jason placed both hands on the table. Because you would not have agreed. Carol snapped her head toward him. Jason did not look at her. He looked at me. I thought about asking you, he said. I knew exactly what you would say. You would open a spreadsheet, calculate how much the money should have grown, and say no. Then Madison would have to get married in a backyard with home-cooked food. So you changed my email. I handle a problème. I let that sentence remain on the table. Jason had just confirmed that he knew I would refuse. He had not forgotten to ask. He had not misunderstood his authority. He had deliberately changed the information to remove me from a decision about an account in my name. Frank stirred his coffee. This should be resolved within the family, he said. It was the first sentence he had spoken since I arrived. I am sitting in the middle of the family, I replied. I mean, do not bring outsiders into it. Who are the outsiders, Frank? He did not answer. He lifted his cup and drank. Madison pushed her chair back. Fine, I'll be direct. She looked at me. Sophie still has 18 months before college. During that time, she can apply for scholarships, work, or choose an in-state school. She put one hand on the edge of the table. I only have one wedding day. That day cannot be done over. Did you ask Sophie? Ask her what? Whether she agreed to let you use $61,000 from her education fund. She is only 16. Exactly, I nodded. She is 16. She was not asked, was not told, and yet she is the only person who has to change her future because of decisions made by the people at this table. Madison looked at me. Rebecca, you are overreacting. And you wrote in the email with the dress invoice that you would pay Sophie back later? Maybe. Madison stood so fast her chair moved. One hand gripped the chair back. Her face changed as soon as she realized I had seen the note. Carol spoke louder than necessary. That is enough. She pushed the papers toward me. I am giving you this. I did not touch them. What is it? A new guarantee form. Silver Peak sent it to Madison after the old file was disputed. Carol placed a pen on top. You only have to sign the last page. $28,000. If you sign, the guarantee can be reconfirmed and the venue can continue processing the contract as before. Then the family will make a plan for Jason to repay Sophie. Carol looked directly at me. I promise. What secures your promise? She blinked. I am asking seriously, I said. Do you and Frank have $28,000 to stand behind that promise? If this is truly only a short-term loan, why don't you sign? Our retirement money is for retirement. Her voice hardened. We cannot go back to work and earn it again. Sophie is 16. She has not even started working yet. She has her whole life ahead of her. I looked at Carol. She had just stated the rule governing the entire room. The youngest person should lose the most because she still had time to make it back. Carol pushed the pen closer to me. One more thing, she said, softening her voice. Do not tell Sophie. I did not answer. She does not need to know. She will look at her father differently forever, Rebecca. You cannot take that back. Carol put her hand on the papers. You sign. The family handles the rest. Later, when the money is repaid, this will only be a difficult period the family got through. Jason watched me. Madison still stood beside her chair. Frank set down his cup. I looked at the pen lying on the papers beneath the kitchen light. This was what they had believed from the beginning. Not that I would never find out. They believed that once I did, I would still sign because I would choose to keep Sophie from learning what her father had done. The entire plan rested on one assumption about me. I looked at Carol. Sophie already knows. She did not understand immediately. What did you say? I told her Monday night. Sophie knows the current balance is 0. She knows there were 2 withdrawals. She knows the money was used for the wedding. Madison dropped back into her chair. Oh my God, she said. She also knows Jason prepared a letter saying the market went down, I continued. I found it in the shared folder Jason and I both use. Frank's coffee cup stopped in his hand. Carol sat straighter. Her eyes moved from me to Jason and then to the papers, as though searching for another argument. Jason shot to his feet. The chair behind him fell to the floor. What did you tell her? No one picked up the chair. What did you tell her? The balance, I said. The 2 withdrawals. And where the money went. You showed her the statements? Who did you want her to hear it from? Jason stood there with his hands on his hips, breathing hard through his mouth. Carol said his name softly, but he did not turn around. Go home, he said to me. Now. I picked up my bag and left the table. Jason followed in his own car. When I reached home, he was already standing in the kitchen beneath the ceiling light. Do you know what you just did? It was not really a question. You changed the way Sophie sees her father. Forever. You cannot take that back, Rebecca. Sophie is upstairs. He lowered his voice, but the anger remained. You should have told me first. When were you going to tell her? At the right time. When was the right time? When I had a solution. Jason opened the refrigerator and closed it without taking anything. When I could sit down and explain what happened, then tell her how I was going to fix it, not while all I had was a hole. After the wedding. He was silent. You planned to tell Sophie after the wedding, I said. You wrote that in the email to Madison. You read my email. You forwarded it to the shared account. Jason leaned back against the counter. both hands braced behind him. I watched him abandon that argument and search for another direction. It was what he always did when a sales conversation did not go according to plan. All right, his voice softened. I need you to do one thing. Call Vanessa Cole tomorrow morning. For what? Tell her you are withdrawing the dispute. Tell her it was a family misunderstanding and has been resolved. That is all. After the wedding, I will put everything back in order. No, you have not even thought about it. You used my name and signature in a $46,000 contract. If I call and say it was only a misunderstanding, I will turn a signature I did not make into an obligation I voluntarily accept. Then accept it. He raised both hands. We are married. The money in this house is family money. I moved money from one family account to a family need. You are making this bigger than it has to be. The 529 account is in my name. Because you opened it. Correct. I am the account owner, and Sophie is the beneficiary. You are not the owner, an authorized user, or someone with the right to withdraw money. I will pay it back. With what? My bonus, plus 18,000 before taxes. I said the number evenly, as though reading a line into the record. The bonus notice was in the shared folder. You knew that amount before you withdrew $61,000. Jason did not ask where I found the document. That is what I remember most clearly about that moment. He was not surprised the document existed. He was only surprised that I had seen it. Sophie can borrow, he said. I looked at him. A lot of students take out loans, Rebecca. You work at a school. You know it is common. She is smart. She can borrow and repay it after graduation. Then why did Madison not borrow? He opened his mouth but did not answer. Madison is 31 and employed. Luke is employed too. If borrowing money for something you want is normal, why did no one suggest that Madison borrow $28,000 for her own wedding? Jason stood in the middle of the kitchen. I let the silence continue. I'm going to bed, he finally said. He went upstairs. A short while later, his office door closed. I sat at the kitchen table in the dim light. A while later, Jason came back down. He stood at the bottom of the stairs with his phone in his hand. I cannot access the 529 account. Correct. The verification codes no longer go to my number. Correct. You changed everything? I restored control of the account held in my name. Jason looked down at his phone, swiped the screen, and typed again. I restored control of the account held in my name. Jason looked down at his phone, swiped the screen, and typed again. One more thing. His voice dropped. Your credit file is frozen. At all 3 credit bureaus. Jason tightened his grip on the phone. One more thing. His voice dropped. Your credit file is frozen. At all 3 credit bureaus. He looked up. It was the first time that night his face truly changed. Not when I said Sophie knew. Not when I mentioned the $18,000 bonus. It was when he realized he could no longer continue using my financial information. You froze your credit. Yes. Do you know how difficult that makes everything? For whom? He did not answer. I looked at the phone in his hand. You just tried to use my credit profile for another financing application, didn't you? Jason lowered the phone to his side. I am looking for options. In my name. I am trying to save the wedding. No. You are trying to create another obligation in my name after I said no. He turned his face away. What about Silver Peak? He asked. What did you do with the venue? Maya sent a formal dispute letter Monday morning. It states clearly that I did not sign and did not authorize anyone to sign for me. What did they say? They are reviewing the file and have suspended every effort to collect the $28,000 from me. The contract deadline remains unchanged. Then who has to pay? The renter and the people who actually promised to pay. Madison. The renter, I said. Jason stood at the bottom of the stairs for a long time. I could see him recalculating every option. The bonus, his parents' money, Luke, services that could be cut, and the remaining balance. For the first time, none of those numbers rested on my shoulders. What do you want? He asked. I want Sophie's money restored, and I want my name removed from every contract, loan, and obligation I did not accept. That is not an answer. That is the entire answer. Jason put the phone in his pocket. You know what could happen Friday, don't you? His voice softened, almost sad. 145 guests are preparing to come. If there is no money, everything could collapse in front of them. It could. And everyone will ask why. He looked directly at me. I will tell them. I will tell every one of them that the wedding could not continue because you decided not to sign. I sat still in the kitchen and looked at my husband standing beneath the stairs. Then you will have to tell them what kind of signature it was, I said, and why I was being asked to make it. Immediately after our confrontation Tuesday night, with only 3 days left before the rehearsal dinner, Jason took his phone into the garage. He stayed there for more than an hour. The garage connected to the kitchen through a thin wooden door we had always planned to replace. I did not stand there listening. I cleaned the kitchen, and pieces of his voice came through the door. I know my credit is good, but I need the money in 3 days. If I borrow or withdraw from the 401k, what are the taxes and penalties? What if the plan requires my wife's signature? When Jason came back inside, he said nothing about those calls. The next morning, Carol called me. Rebecca, I want to ask you something. If Frank and I withdraw $28,000 from our retirement account, can we get it back? Are you asking me or the account administrator? I'm asking you because you understand these financial documents. If you and Frank withdraw the money, it will leave the account. There may also be taxes or penalties, depending on the account type. You would only get it back if someone repaid you. Carol was silent. No, she said, we cannot do that. That is our retirement money. I understand. Do not say it like that. I truly understand why you do not want to lose your retirement money. Carol hung up. She had called to ask what would happen if she personally accepted the risk the whole family still expected Sophie to accept. When the answer was that she might lose money, she said no. Wednesday night, Madison brought Luke to the house. I opened the door. Luke carried a paper bag, as he usually did when visiting. Madison stood half a step ahead of him. Is Jason home? She asked. They sat in the living room. I remained in the kitchen, separated by an open doorway. I have $11,000, Luke said. That is all my savings. I plan to use it as a down payment on a house, but I can give it to the venue. 11,000, Jason said. That still leaves 17,000. Luke paused. You told me the venue had been paid. There is a balance caught up in something. Caught up how? Paperwork. The guarantor. Who is the guarantor? No one answered immediately. Rebecca, Madison said. She refuses to confirm it. I stood in the kitchen with a dish towel in my hand. I could have stepped out, opened the contract, and shown Luke my name in the guarantee section. But if I did, Jason would immediately know I was listening. The conversation would shift from Luke's questions to a confrontation with me. I stayed in the kitchen. Why won't Rebecca confirm? Luke asked. That is private between my wife and me, Jason said. It does not concern you. Luke was silent for a long time. Jason. His voice changed. Tell me the truth. Where did the money for the venue come from? I told you, my bonus and savings. Then why is there still a balance? Because the wedding cost more than expected. Jason spoke faster than usual. The resort added all kinds of charges. Have you ever planned a wedding for 145 guests? No, Luke said. I also never wanted a wedding like this. Luke, Madison warned. He did not respond to her. I will provide 11,000, Luke said. But before I do, I want to see the contract and every payment already made. The room fell silent. Jason did not answer immediately. I'll find the records, he finally said. Luke and Madison left not long afterward. From the kitchen doorway, I watched their car leave. Luke still did not know the money came from Sophie's 529 fund. But for the first time, he was no longer accepting Jason's word without asking to see documents. Thursday was Jason's last full day to find $28,000 before the rehearsal dinner. That evening, he placed 2 sheets of paper in front of me at the kitchen table. Sophie was upstairs. The document had been printed on our home printer. I knew Jason had drafted it because an extra parenthesis remained on the 4th line. Internal agreement between Jason M. Nolan and Rebecca A. Nolan. I read the entire document. 4 terms. 1. Jason agreed to repay $61,000 to Sophie's education fund within 3 years, on a quarterly payment schedule. 2. Rebecca would sign the new guarantee form and confirm to Silver Peak Lodge that she was responsible for the remaining $28,000. 3. Neither party would discuss the matter further with Sophie, and they would present a unified explanation about the status of the fund. 4. Rebecca would withdraw every dispute concerning the signature in the Silver Peak Lodge contract and confirm that the signature had been placed there with her consent. I read item 4 again. Jason was not only asking me to assume another $28,000. He was asking me to sign a document saying that a signature I had never made had been placed in the contract with my consent. You know you want the money restored, Jason said. This is a written commitment to repay it. There is a schedule. It is all in black and white. What more do you want? Where will the money for this schedule come from? 3 years is 12 quarters. I have bonuses, commissions, and I'll cut expenses. You spent all week trying to find $28,000 and still did not find it. I put down the document. Now you are promising to find $61,000. This is different. It is a long-term plan. What about item 3? He looked down at the table. Item 3 says you and I will give Sophie a unified explanation. I read the line again. You still want me to lie to her. I want Sophie to have a story she can live with. She already has a story. It is the truth. Rebecca. Jason leaned forward. Tomorrow is the rehearsal dinner. Then the wedding. There are 145 guests. You sign this and confirm with Silver Peak, and everything continues. I have 3 years to fix it. He placed one finger on the last page. If you do not sign, everything could fall apart in front of the whole family. Fall apart on whom? On Sophie, he answered immediately. She will sit there and watch everyone turn against each other, and she will know it all began with her money. I looked at Jason. 6 weeks earlier, he had bet that I would stay silent to protect Sophie. Now that Sophie knew, he was betting that I would sign to protect her from the consequences. He still used the same thing to pressure me, my love for my daughter. I pushed the 2 pages toward him. No, you have not even thought about it. I have been thinking since I saw the zero balance. I stood. You asked what I want beyond a 3-year promise. I pointed to the final clause. I want not to sign a document saying, I agreed to let you use my signature. Jason did not pick up the papers. The 2 pages remained on the table after he left the kitchen. I photographed each page clearly and sent copies to Maya. Near 11 that night, my phone vibrated. A message from Madison. Tomorrow I will stand up and thank Jason in front of everyone. You should have your smile ready. Vanessa Cole's email arrived at 9:15 Friday morning. The recipients were Madison Nolan, Luke Parker, Jason Nolan, and me. Subject: Silver Peak Lodge contract, final payment deadline notice. Vanessa wrote briefly and clearly. Silver Peak Lodge had to receive the remaining $28,000 by 9 that night. The file showed that the guarantee in my name was disputed and that no replacement guarantee form had been signed. If the venue did not receive full payment by the deadline, the contract would be considered unpaid. Use of the Aspen Ballroom and the outdoor ceremony area for the next day would be suspended. Silver Peak would also stop equipment installation and any other event preparation dependent on that contract. Guest rooms that had already been individually reserved and paid for would remain under their separate terms. Unbooked rooms in the wedding block would be returned to the general inventory. The final line said, Tonight's rehearsal dinner has been paid in full and will proceed as scheduled. I read the email at my desk between 2 student appointments. Then I read the last line again. About 60 people would still sit beneath lights and floral decorations that night. The wedding the next day had less than 12 hours left to be saved. I replied, Received. Thank you. A few minutes later, Jason texted, You have less than 12 hours. I did not reply. I took the afternoon off and went home. Maya had sent me a list of what I could bring if the family publicly blamed me. I followed it item by item. First was the 529 account statement. I redacted the account number, address, and every unnecessary identifying detail. What remained showed only the balance before the 2 withdrawals, the $35,000 transaction, the $26,000 transaction, and the current zero balance. Next was the table of 7 expenses, totaling $61,000. Then came a passage from Madison's email, asking Jason whether I checked the account. Another passage showed Jason saying he would tell Sophie the market had fallen and the fund had not grown as expected. Finally, I included the dispute letter to Silver Peak Lodge on Maya's firm letterhead, stating that I did not sign and did not authorize anyone to sign for me. I did not bring the full email thread. I did not bring the copy of my driver's license. I did not bring tax information or any document containing a social security number. Maya kept the divorce papers and the other legal documents. I placed the 5 redacted documents in a gray file pouch, the kind I used for scholarship records. Maya called in the middle of the afternoon. "Rebecca, are you ready?" "Yes. I want to repeat 3 things. I'm listening. First, do not read the insulting things written about Sophie. Use only the lines proving the source of the money, the concealment, and the explanation Jason prepared. Understood? Second, do not give anyone unnecessary private information. No full account numbers, no social security numbers, no tax records. If an answer would require that information, say all further communication must go through me. Understood? Third, speak only if someone publicly blames you or uses Sophie to justify what they did, not merely because someone says something that angers you. What if no one does either of those things? Eat dinner, take Sophie home, and let the 9 o'clock deadline run." Maya paused. "The file pouch is not a revenge plan. The work you needed to do has already been done. You are carrying evidence only, so you cannot be forced into silence in front of a public lie. Will you be at Silver Peak? I'll be nearby, but I will not attend the family dinner. If you need me, text." "All right." Sophie came home late that afternoon. She went straight upstairs. A little while later, she came down in a dark blue dress. "Is this okay, Mom?" "Yes." I looked at her standing at the bottom of the stairs. "Sophie, I have to ask one last time. You do not have to go. I can simply say you are not attending. No one has the right to demand an explanation." "I know. If you go, we will leave whenever you want." Sophie came down the rest of the stairs. "Are you planning to stand up and say something?" "I am not going there to give a speech." I pointed to the file pouch. "But if someone tells everyone I caused the wedding to fail, or uses you to justify taking the money, I will answer with what I can prove." "Will you tell them everything?" "No, only what is necessary." Sophie looked at the gray pouch on the table. "I still want to go. Tell me why." She thought before answering. "If I do not go, they will still talk about me. People will say poor Sophie, or that it is better I was not there. I do not want to be the only person absent from my own story." She adjusted the strap of her dress. "And I want to hear Aunt Madison thank Dad while I am sitting there. I need to know whether she can really say it in front of me." I stayed silent for a few seconds. In my work, I had heard many students say something painful but completely clear. When that happened, my job was not to deny how they felt. My job was to make sure they understood they had the right to stop. "All right," I said, "but you do not have to answer anyone, and you do not have to stay until the end." "I understand." Jason came home, changed clothes, and left first in his own car. Before closing the door, he said, "Both of you be there before 7. I did not answer. I went to Sophie's room to get her coat. The blue Times College Plan Times binder was on her desk, closed with a rubber band wrapped around it. I looked at it, then at Sophie. "Do you want to bring it?" She looked at the binder for a moment. "Yes." Sophie carried it downstairs herself and placed it in the gray file pouch beside the statement showing the 0 balance. The final road up to Silver Peak Lodge was steep and winding. At each curve, the pine forest opened onto darker stretches of valley. Sophie sat in the passenger seat, holding her phone but not looking at the screen. 6:40, she said as we entered the parking lot. 2 hours and 20 minutes remained before the 9 o'clock deadline. Silver Peak Lodge was a large timber and stone building set against the mountainside. From the parking lot, almost every window was lit. We entered the main lobby. The first thing I saw was flowers. White flowers stood on both sides of the entrance, wrapped around the stair railings, and filled small vases along the hallway. I lightly touched one petal as I passed. It was cold and still damp. $7,500 flowers and decor. Sophie slowed down. A wooden sign edged in brass stood on the reception desk. Welcome to the Nolan Parker wedding. Beside it were cloth gift bags, each printed with Madison and Luke's names and tied with twine. $3,500 welcome party and guest gifts. Sophie looked at the bags but said nothing. We continued down the hallway. Both ballroom doors were open. Inside, the technical crew moved speakers, cables, and lighting trusses into place. Someone tested a microphone on stage. 1, 2, 1, 2. $9,500 band, sound, and lighting. Sophie stood outside the door for a few seconds. I did not ask what she was thinking. I did not need to repeat the numbers. She had seen the 7 expense table before we left home. Now those lines were no longer on a sheet of paper. They stood in front of her as flowers, gifts, speakers, and lights. Sophie turned away first. The rehearsal dinner room was beside the ballroom. About 60 places had been set. A seating chart stood on a wooden easel at the door. I found our names. Table 2. Jason Nolan, Rebecca Nolan, Sophie Nolan, Carol Nolan, Frank Nolan. My name sat among the people who knew Sophie's money had been used and had still asked me to remain silent. Jason stood in one corner with several of Luke's guests. He held a beer in one hand. The other kept reaching into his pocket for his phone. He checked the screen, put it away, then pulled it out again a few minutes later. No message made his shoulders relax. Madison entered when nearly everyone had arrived. She wore a short white dress and a sash that said Times Bride. She moved around the room, hugging guests and thanking each person for coming. When she saw Sophie and me, her eyes stopped for one beat. Then she turned to another table. Carol walked directly to Sophie. She rested a hand on the back of the chair beside her. Sit next to me. Sophie looked at her. Yes, Grandma. Carol patted Sophie's shoulder, then turned to ask a server about the order of the courses. She used the voice of someone controlling the room. The server answered in the polite voice of someone serving a customer. Luke arrived after Madison. He went directly to Jason. They exchanged a few words. Jason put a hand on Luke's shoulder and gave a longer answer with a smile. Luke did not smile back. He nodded, then walked over to stand alone beside the window. I did not know what Jason had said, but Luke did not look like someone who had received a reassuring answer. I knew Maya was near the resort, but she was not attending dinner. My phone remained in my pocket, and her number was at the top of my contact list. At 7:30, Vanessa Cole appeared in the dining room doorway holding a clipboard. She spoke briefly to the service manager, then looked toward me. Vanessa tilted her head toward the hallway. I stood and went outside. We stopped in the corridor between the dining room and the lobby. Through the large windows, the valley had turned deep blue. Miss Nolan, Vanessa said, I need to update you on the file. The renter and the other contacts have received the same information. I'm listening. As of 7:30, Silver Peak has not received the $28,000. The deadline remains 9 p.m. Has the contract been amended? No. We have not received a new guarantee form or an approved replacement payment. Vanessa looked down at the clipboard. Jason asked whether the resort could accept a partial payment tonight and allow a written promise for the balance later. I told him any amendment had to be approved in writing by management before the deadline. No amendment has been approved. I nodded. So preparation continues until 9? Yes, the teams are working under the current schedule. If full payment is not received before 9, we will follow the notice sent this morning. Through the ballroom doors, I could still hear the microphone test and the sound of metal trusses being lifted. You do not need me to confirm anything? I asked. No, Vanessa answered immediately. You denied the guarantee. I am not asking you to approve or reject any event activity. All right. I only need to confirm one point for the record. She looked directly at me. You have not asked Silver Peak to cancel, stop early, or change any service, correct? Correct. I have not asked for any change. I looked at the clock on the wall at the end of the hallway. Follow the contract. 9 o'clock means 9 o'clock. Vanessa recorded my answer. If payment is not received, I will notify the renter and the relevant departments as soon as the deadline passes. Thank you. I returned to the dining room. Sophie sat at table 2 with her back straight and both hands in her lap. Carol sat beside her, speaking to Frank across Sophie. I had just pulled out my chair when Carol stood. Rebecca, come outside with me for a moment. She held her purse. Behind Carol, Jason and Madison also stood. Frank braced one hand on the table and slowly rose with them. There is a small room at the end of the hallway, Carol said. It will only take 5 minutes. She opened her purse. Carol took out a folded stack of papers and a pen. The small room was at the end of the hallway beside the rear patio exit. Inside were a round table, 6 chairs, and a window overlooking the outdoor ceremony area, where rows of white chairs had already been set up. Carol entered last and closed the door. Sit down, Rebecca. I'll stand. She placed the papers on the table and smoothed them with her palm. The pen lay across the last page. It is almost 8. Carol softened her voice. You sign here, and everything ends. Madison gets married tomorrow, the guests go home, and then the family has time to arrange the rest. Ends? You know what I mean. Jason stepped half a pace forward. I will repay it, Rebecca. Every dollar. I gave you a schedule, and I will sign any commitment you want. Tonight, I only need the guarantee for the $28,000. You need a guarantor Silver Peak approves, I said. That is why you still need my signature. Jason did not answer. Frank sat in one of the chairs with both hands on his knees. Rebecca, he said, I am not good at talking about things like this, but there are about 60 people eating dinner outside. Tomorrow, there will be 145 guests. This is the family's chance to get through this without anyone being humiliated. It was the longest sentence Frank had said to me since this began. Did you read the email thread? He looked down at his hands. Yes. Did you object or ask them to stop? Frank did not answer. Madison leaned against the wall beside the window with her arms crossed. The white Times Bride Times sash still hung over her arm. 145 guests arranged travel, she said. People bought tickets, reserved rooms, and took time off work to be here. Do you understand what will happen if everything collapses at the last minute? Madison, did you know where the venue deposit came from? Her posture did not change. I knew it was money from Sophie's education fund, she said. I did not know you would turn it into this. The room went silent. Madison had just admitted aloud what, until then, I had only in emails and documents. She knew before the money was spent. When did you know? Before I signed the venue contract. I looked at Carol. You heard her, didn't you? Carol did not answer. I turned back to Madison. Then I have one question. Who gave you the right to decide that Sophie would have to borrow money for college? No one decided anything. Someone did. I stepped closer to the table. Someone looked at the 529 account held in my name for a 16-year-old child and decided that money could be used for your wedding. Madison pushed away from the wall. Sophie can borrow. Her voice rose. A lot of students borrow money. She is smart. She can earn scholarships, choose a cheaper school, and repay the loans after graduation. She raised one hand. She will still be fine. The door opened. Sophie stood in the doorway. I did not know how much she had heard. One hand still rested on the knob. She was not crying. Her face was simply focused, as it was when she tried to understand a difficult problem. No one spoke. Sophie stepped inside and closed the door. Aunt Madison. Sophie, Jason began. I am talking to Aunt Madison. She did not look at her father. You just said I could borrow money. Madison looked at Jason, then at Carol. You can say it to me, Sophie said. I'm here. I did not mean that. I only have one question. Sophie stood a few steps from the table. Do you have a plan to repay the money that was used? Jason will. I am not asking about Dad. Sophie's voice stayed even. $11,000 from my fund paid for your dress. Do you have a plan to repay that part? Madison opened her mouth and closed it. I do not have a specific schedule yet, she said. I'll work it out after the wedding. Sophie looked at her for a few seconds. Then she gave a very small nod, as though recording an answer. Okay. I stepped closer to Sophie but did not touch her. She had asked what she needed to ask. I would not let the negotiation fall onto her shoulders. Carol pushed the papers toward me. The pen slid with them and stopped near the table's edge. "Rebecca," she said more quickly, "there is more than an hour left. Sign it. What happened between everyone can be handled later, but tonight you have to sign." I looked down at the papers. The last page had a blank signature line. Beneath it were the words, "Financial Guarantor." I picked up the pen. Jason exhaled. Madison uncrossed her arms. I set the pen beside the papers and pushed both back toward Carol. "You can sign your own name." Carol did not move. "If you believe Jason will repay everything, put your name on this form and let Silver Peak verify you." I kept my voice normal. "If this is only a short delay in payment, the risk to you is the same risk everyone is asking Sophie to accept." Carol's hand remained flat on the table, less than a handspan from the pen. She did not reach for it. "Frank," I said, "can you guarantee it?" He looked at the floor. I turned to Jason. "You are the financial contact. You can submit your own name for Silver Peak to review." "They will not accept me," Jason said. "You already know that." "Yes," I said. "I know." I looked at Carol, Frank, and Madison. "All of you know where the money came from. All of you say Sophie can get scholarships, attend community college, or take on debt because she has her whole life ahead of her." I pointed to the pen. "But when $28,000 has to stand under the name of someone in this room, no one wants to pick it up." No one moved. Sophie stepped closer to the round table. She looked at the pen, then at each person. Her grandmother, grandfather, aunt, and father. Sophie picked up the pen with 2 fingers, laid it neatly in the center of the table, and gently pushed it toward them. "You can pay for this wedding yourselves." No one left the small room together. Sophie went first. I followed. We returned to table 2 and sat down. A few minutes later, Carol entered the dining room, smiled at a guest, and sat beside Sophie as though she had only stepped out to check something minor. The appetizers had been cleared. The servers began bringing out the main course. About 60 guests sat around round tables. Candles burned on the tables, and a microphone stood on a stand at the front of the room. Luke spoke first. He held the microphone in both hands and kept it short. He thanked everyone for coming. He thanked his parents, then thanked Carol and Frank for welcoming him into the family. He said he was not used to speaking in public. People laughed. Luke did not mention money. He did not thank Jason either. I did not know how much Luke had figured out. But 3 days earlier, he had said he would repay Jason after the wedding. That night, he did not mention Jason even once. Frank went next. He told a brief story about Madison as a child, wished her and Luke happiness, and sat down quickly. Carol took the microphone. She did not need notes. "I have 2 children," she said. "And tonight I want to say something I may not have said enough." She turned toward table 2. "Jason has always been the one who takes care of the family. He always puts other people first, especially his sister." Carol's voice trembled slightly. "Jason, I want to thank you, because you have never left anyone in this family to handle things alone." There was applause. Jason lowered his head as though uncomfortable with the praise. Sophie picked up her fork, cut a piece of food, and put it in her mouth. She chewed, swallowed, and set down the fork. I watched Carol return to her seat and adjust the napkin on her lap. Less than an hour earlier, she had sat less than a handspan from the guarantee pen and refused to reach for it. Now she was thanking Jason for never leaving anyone to handle things alone. Madison stood next with a glass of champagne. She rested one hand on Luke's shoulder. He placed his hand over hers but did not look toward Jason. "I'll keep this short because everyone is still eating." There was a small laugh. When Luke and I first looked at the cost, we thought we would have to give up the wedding we wanted. The dining room gradually became quiet. Then my brother called. Madison turned toward Jason. He said, "You only get married once. I'll handle it." She raised her glass. "Jason, you saved my dream. I know it was not easy. I know you had to sacrifice a great deal, and I will never forget it." Jason raised his glass in return. Madison did not sit down yet. "I also learned something while planning this wedding." Her voice slowed. "Some people look at a wedding and see only invoices, only numbers, costs, and things that can be added or subtracted on a spreadsheet." She did not look at me. She did not need to. Several people in the room had already turned toward table 2. Madison continued. But family is not something you calculate. Family is something you invest in. When someone you love needs you, you do not ask where every dollar went. Jason looked directly at me. He lowered his eyes to the table, then looked up again. Only once. I understood the warning. Do not. I leaned toward Sophie. Do you want to go outside? I asked very quietly. I'll go with you. We can leave right now. Sophie set down her fork. No, you do not have to hear the rest. I want to hear all of it. She looked directly at Madison. Madison raised her glass higher. This wedding proves that love matters more than money. The room applauded. Several people raised their glasses. Luke stood beside Madison and lightly kissed her hair. I looked at the clock on the wall. 8:31. 29 minutes remained before the 9 o'clock deadline. Through the wall separating us from the ballroom, I heard a faint drum test. The technical crew was still preparing a wedding that had not been paid for in full. Madison took a sip of champagne and started to return to her chair. I remained seated. I did not stand because she had called me someone who only saw invoices. I stood because she had publicly turned taking Sophie's money into an act of love, while Sophie sat directly in front of her. I reached beside my chair and pulled the gray file pouch onto my lap. Sophie saw it. She said nothing. Before Madison had fully sat down, I stood. May I have 1 minute? The dining room turned toward me. I did not walk to the microphone. I stood at table 2 with one hand on the back of my chair and used the same voice I used during crowded parent meetings. My name is Rebecca Nolan. I am Jason's wife. Chairs shifted across the floor. Jason lifted himself from his chair, then sat back down. Madison just said one thing that is true. I do look at invoices. I look at numbers and ask where the money came from. I opened the file pouch. I removed the statement with all private information redacted and placed it face up on the table in front of me. No one at another table could read every line, but everyone could see the bold 0 balance at the bottom of the page. Carol said my name. Frank set down his cup. I looked across the room at Madison. She was still standing with the champagne glass in her hand. Madison, I said, would you like to tell Sophie whose money bought your $11,000 dress? Madison set her champagne glass on the table. The glass struck the wood harder than she intended. What are you doing? I am answering. Jason stood all the way up. Rebecca, come outside and talk. No. I did not look at him. Madison just told 60 people that some people see only invoices. I am going to explain what those invoices are, and then I will sit down. No one in the dining room said anything. A server walking between the tables stopped with a tray in hand and backed toward the wall. I looked down at the statement on the table, but I did not need to read every line. My daughter is 16. She has a 529 fund that I opened when she was 3. I am the account owner, and Sophie is the beneficiary. I spoke slowly and clearly, without raising my voice. Before the money was withdrawn, the fund held $61,000. Then there was a $35,000 withdrawal and a $26,000 withdrawal. I pointed to the final line. The current balance is 0. Someone at a nearby table drew in a sharp breath. I did not make or authorize either withdrawal. I discovered them only after Silver Peak Lodge called and asked how I wanted to pay the remaining $28,000. I placed the 7 expense table beside the statement. The money was divided into 7 payments. I read each line. $18,000 for the Silver Peak Lodge deposit, $11,000 for the wedding dress, $9,500 for the band, sound, and lighting, $7,500 for flowers and decor, $6,000 for photography and video, $5,500 for the honeymoon deposit, $3,500 for the welcome party and guest gifts. I looked up. The total is exactly $61,000, not $1 more. Luke stood. He did not look at me. He turned directly toward Madison. Did you know? Luke, did you know that money came from Sophie's college fund? Madison raised both hands. Jason said he would repay it. He said he had a bonus and would. I did not ask what Jason promised. Luke's voice was very low. I asked whether you knew where the money came from. Madison did not answer. I took a redacted email page from the pouch. I will read only one passage. I placed it on the table. In an email sent before the money was withdrawn, Madison asked Jason, "Are you sure? I do not want to sign the venue contract and then have to cancel. Does she check that account?" I stopped. Luke stood perfectly still. I watched him connect that question to everything he had heard during the past week. "You asked whether Rebecca checked the account," he said. "You did not ask where the money came from." Madison looked at him. "You knew." "Luke, I thought Jason would repay. I stood in front of everyone and said I would repay Jason." Luke's voice remained quiet. "While you knew the money was not his." Jason stepped away from his chair. "All right, that is enough." He spoke louder than everyone else. "This is a family matter, and my wife is turning it into a spectacle." "There is one more document," I said. I removed a printout from the shared folder Jason and I used. "This is a draft letter to Sophie. It was never sent." I looked around the room. The letter says the investment market declined. The fund did not grow as expected, and Sophie should narrow her school list. It suggests that she begin at community college and transfer later. I placed the document on the table. The letter was accompanied by a false spreadsheet showing the fund's value. The numbers do not match the real statements. I looked at Jason. "You were not going to tell her the money had been withdrawn. You were going to give her a spreadsheet and tell her the market reduced the fund." The dining room was so quiet that I heard the kitchen door close behind us. Sophie stood. She held nothing in her hands. She only turned toward her father. "Dad." Jason looked at her. "Sophie, sit down. You do not understand the whole situation. I understand the important part." Sophie's voice was soft but clear. "You did not lose my money in the market. You chose to use it. I did it for the family." Jason took one step toward her. "You are too young to understand that adults sometimes have to make difficult decisions. I am family too." Jason stopped. Sophie did not sound angry. She spoke as though pointing out a missing term in an equation. "I have lived in that house with you for 16 years, she said. "I am family too." Jason did not answer. I took the final document from the pouch. "One more thing, and then I will sit down." I placed a copy of the contract's guarantee page on the table. In the Silver Peak Lodge contract, I am listed as the financial guarantor. There is an electronic signature in my name, sent to an email address almost identical to mine except for one missing character. I pointed to the attachment line. Immediately before the signature was recorded, a copy of my driver's license was uploaded to the file. I looked around the room. I did not sign that contract. I did not authorize anyone to sign for me. Maya sent a formal dispute letter on Monday morning of the wedding week. Jason turned toward me. "You just ruined my sister's wedding in front of 60 people. "I did not cancel anything," I said. "I refused to validate a signature I never made." Luke stepped away from his chair. "Madison." She looked at him. "I'm going to ask you one last question. Think before you answer. Do not do this here. If Rebecca had not stood up tonight, when were you going to tell me?" Madison looked around the room. She looked at Jason, then at Carol. "Rebecca could have let the wedding happen," she said. "She could have waited until after tomorrow and then everyone could have dealt with it. She chose to do this tonight, in front of everyone." Luke raised one hand. He did not argue. He only looked at Madison, and I saw the moment he understood that she was still talking about the person who revealed the truth, not about what she had done. Luke removed the white boutonniere from his lapel and placed it on the table. "The wedding tomorrow is not happening," he said. "I am postponing it." "Luke, not only because of the money." He looked directly at Madison. "I can live with not having enough money. I cannot marry you tomorrow after learning that you let me stand up and thank Jason while you knew the money came from Sophie." He turned toward the door. Madison followed him, but Luke did not stop. Several of his relatives stood and left the room behind him. The clock on the wall passed 9. 2 minutes later, Vanessa Cole entered the dining room. She wore dark business attire and carried a clipboard. Vanessa went directly to Madison, the renter, not to me. "Miss Nolan, I need to notify you of the contract status." The dining room fell quiet. As of 9 p.m., Silver Peak Lodge has not received the $28,000 payment. We also have not received an approved replacement payment arrangement or guarantor. Vanessa spoke in a calm, professional voice. Therefore, tomorrow's event cannot proceed under the current schedule. Access to the Aspen Ballroom and the outdoor ceremony area is suspended. Equipment installation must stop tonight. She looked down at the clipboard. Guest rooms that were individually booked and paid for will remain reserved. Unbooked rooms in the event block will be returned to general inventory. Vanessa lowered the clipboard. I am very sorry. Our staff will work with you directly regarding the next steps. She turned away. Through the open door, I saw the ballroom crew stop working. One person lowered a lighting truss. Two others began coiling cables and pushing speakers toward a side door. The test lighting on the stage went dark. No one asked whether I wanted them to stop. No one needed my permission. 9 o'clock had arrived, the payment had not been made, and Silver Peak was simply following the contract. Carol walked around the table and grabbed my wrist. Rebecca. She spoke quickly and quietly. Pay it. They may still be able to rearrange things. The family can resolve the rest later. I gently removed her hand. No, Carol. You are destroying an entire family. I do not have $28,000 to give this wedding. I looked at her. And even if I did, I would not use it to replace the people who chose to spend Sophie's money. Jason stood in the middle of the dining room. Many guests had left their seats. You are not divorcing me, he said. You are only angry. You would not do that to Sophie. Maya entered from the hallway with a man I had never met. The man walked directly to Jason and stopped one step away. Are you Jason M. Nolan? Jason looked at him. Yes, I am serving you with legal papers. He handed Jason a thick envelope. Jason accepted it reflexively. Maya stood beside them and spoke quietly enough that only the nearest people could hear. It contains a petition for divorce, a notice to preserve assets, and a request for temporary orders concerning the financial accounts and Sophie's education fund. She kept her voice professional. From this point forward, all financial communication between you and Rebecca should go through my office. Jason stood holding the envelope. Sophie walked around table 2. She came to me first and removed the blue plastic binder from the gray file pouch. Then she walked to her father and stopped about 3 feet away. Sophie did not raise the binder. She simply held it with both hands in front of her stomach, the way she always carried her college plan from the kitchen table to her room. You chose her wedding, she said. Jason opened his mouth. Mom is choosing my future. Jason moved out of the house 11 days after the rehearsal dinner. The temporary agreement stated clearly that he could not access, change information, or contact any financial institution concerning the 529 account held in my name with Sophie as beneficiary. He signed it. The rest took nearly 10 months. During the property division, the $61,000 withdrawn from Sophie's fund was assigned to Jason's side of the responsibility. Taxes, fees, and direct costs caused by restoring the account were also included in the amount he had to reimburse under the final agreement. The property Jason received was reduced accordingly. The remaining balance was divided into periodic payments, transferred directly into the 529 fund on a mandatory schedule. He also signed an acknowledgement that he could not use my name, signature, personal information, or online accounts without my clear written consent. The divorce was finalized in the spring. I kept the house after recalculating the budget many times and confirming that Sophie and I could maintain it on my income. I did not prohibit Jason from seeing Sophie. I also did not decide for her what that relationship would look like. Sophie set her own boundaries. She saw her father when she felt ready. During the first few months, she did not stay overnight and did not attend dinners at Carol's house. Once, on the way home after seeing Jason, Sophie told me what she had said to him. You can tell this story however you want, but you do not get to make Mom the person who caused it. I did not ask how Jason replied. The wedding did not take place on the scheduled date. Luke left Silver Peak Lodge that night. He and Madison continued talking for a while, but eventually Luke ended the engagement. He sent Sophie a message apologizing for standing up and thanking Jason at the rehearsal dinner. Sophie replied that Luke did not know the truth when he said those things. Madison lost several non-refundable deposits. Refunds that could still be recovered for unperformed services were applied to Sophie's reimbursement. She sold the $11,000 dress for only a fraction of its purchase price. All proceeds from the sale were placed into the repayment fund under the agreement Madison signed concerning the items from which she had directly benefited. Madison did not call Sophie. Carol called me many times during the first few months. Every call returned to the same sentence: "You destroyed Madison's wedding." The last time she said it, I answered, "Carol, the wedding could not continue because no one paid the remaining $28,000. I did not take that money away. It was never my responsibility." She was silent. "I also did not ask Luke to postpone the wedding," I continued. "He made that decision himself after learning what Madison had hidden from him." Carol hung up. Frank met Sophie once at a coffee shop near the school. He apologized and said Jason had made a mistake. Sophie replied, "A mistake does not continue through 2 withdrawals, 7 expenses, and a forged signature, Grandpa." Frank did not argue. The 529 fund was restored from several sources. Refunds still recoverable from vendors, proceeds from the dress and other items that could be resold. Reimbursements Madison was required to make. The reduction in Jason's share of the marital property under the divorce settlement. His mandatory periodic repayments. And the amount I contributed each month after recalculating our household budget. Every amount recovered from Madison or a vendor was deducted from the remaining reimbursement balance. No amount was counted twice. The money did not return in one day. Some months the account increased by only a small amount. Some months Jason's payment arrived late and Maya had to send notice through his attorney. But the payment schedule was enforced. Exactly 1 year after the day I saw the zero balance, the total recovered and replenished, without double counting, reached $61,000. I opened the new statement at the kitchen table. There was no unfamiliar alert email. Jason's phone number no longer appeared in the verification settings. There was not a single transaction I did not recognize. Sophie could continue applying to the schools she wanted without my taking out a Parent Plus loan to replace money that had been taken. She began her senior year of high school. She was preparing early applications to 3 schools with environmental engineering programs. She still applied for scholarships, but no longer with the feeling that she had to fill a hole someone else created. That summer, the 2 of us flew to Oregon for a college visit. The morning we reached the field research station, mist still hung low over the water. A student handed Sophie a pair of chest waders and showed her how to step into the creek to collect a sample. I stood on the bank and took pictures. Sophie turned to look at me, holding the sampling tube in both hands while water flowed around her knees. For the first time in a year, I looked at her standing inside her own plans for the future without seeing a wedding invoice behind her. As for me, I changed every password, verification setting, and method of storing documents in the house. No education account still shared login information. I also added a short section to the financial information sessions I gave parents at school. Who actually owns a 529 account, how to review alerts, how to protect identity documents, and where to begin after discovering that financial information has been changed. I did not tell my story during those sessions. I only gave them the checklist of things I wished I had examined sooner. Last Saturday night, Sophie brought the blue binder down to the kitchen table. It was still the old binder with the Times College Plan Times label, written on masking tape. One corner of the label had yellowed, but she had never replaced it. Sophie opened the binder and spread the papers across the table. College visit schedule. Scholarship list with deadlines written in red ink. Early application deadlines. Information about the field program in Oregon. At the bottom was a new 4-year budget. Sophie had created columns for tuition, living expenses, expected scholarships, and the amount she might need to borrow in each scenario. The final column listed the current balance of the 529 fund. The real number. I showed her the updated statement and told her that whenever she wanted to check, we would log in together. "What is your worst-case scenario now?" I asked. Sophie turned the table toward me and pointed to one cell. "If I choose Oregon, I may still have to borrow a small amount," she said, "but I know exactly how much, and I know why." A year earlier, they had used $61,000 from Sophie's college fund to buy one perfect day for Madison. 1 year later, the full $61,000 was back in the fund, and the Times College Plan Times binder was once again on my kitchen table. This time, no one but my daughter had the right to decide the future inside it. It took me a long time to understand that protecting a family does not mean staying silent while one person sacrifices someone else's future to preserve their own happiness. No one had the right to take away Sophie's choices, whether they called it love, responsibility, or family. Because real love does not decide for another person. It protects their right to know the truth and choose their own path.